Hey Giants fans, welcome back to Giants Latest. It's week 2 of the preseason. The Giants take on the Jets at MetLife Stadium, but of course. And today we're going to talk through some of the offensive players to watch because even though there aren't real battles for a lot of starting roles, I think there's still a lot of opportunity here for players to take it to the next level and to prove that they deserve some reps with the starters, even if they're not the first group of ones that enter out on the field. So I want to focus on the offense today, and then tomorrow we're going to focus on the defense because I think on the offense, there definitely are a lot of good players to watch. Now, obviously, we don't know if we're going to see someone like Malik Neighbors. He is not back at practice just yet, and us as fans and the public do not have access to practice anymore for the rest of the week or for the rest of the season. So training camp is officially wrapped until next year, which is crazy, but that means football season is officially here, which is exciting. So obviously this offense is going to look different without Malik Neighbors. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about the quarterbacks and the offensive line because these two positions to me, plus the wide receiver competition, are the most important from an offensive standpoint. I think when you look at the running backs and you look at the tight ends, you could say it's pretty obvious who's going to make the roster. Do I want to see Turbo show out this weekend? Absolutely. I want him to prove that he deserves that roster spot instead of Devin Singletary. But I think there are guys who have more important roles that we need to see more out of, starting with the quarterback. So, the thing with the Jets practices this week is that the offense has not looked great. And part of that is because Malik Neighbors is not on the field. Part of that is because Darius Slayton is not involved in team drills. Maybe a little bit is because of the rotations at the offensive line. But ultimately, the quarterbacks have to do their job. And the biggest thing that I want to see from Russell Wilson is getting through his reads to the point where it doesn't feel like he's always taking the check down option. One of the concerns that a lot of us had with Russell Wilson coming onto this team and being the starting quarterback is the fact that he hasn't really utilized the middle of the field in a while. It's either a check down or it's a deep ball. This is a common complaint that I hear from a lot of other Giants fans. And I'm with you guys on that. Ultimately, I feel like he's the best quarterback that we've had on this team in a really long time. And I feel like because of all the experience that he has and because we know he's going to throw the deep ball and be more accurate and do things like that, that we're going to see a more successful offense. But it is a little scary when Neighbors is not on the field and this offense seems like they're struggling. So I think part of that is from Russell, and I want to see him, not always go for the check down every time, right? Like that's one of the things that I want to see this weekend is that if Malik Neighbors is not on the field, can you still get the ball in other playmakers' hands, like the tight ends, like Theo Johnson, like Daniel Bellinger, like Wan'Dale Robinson, and give them an opportunity to make the play? Now, I think we're going to see Jalen Hyatt this weekend, which could open up the deep ball if we don't see Darius Slayton, if we don't see Malik Neighbors, and maybe we're going to see a bit more of an explosive offense with Jalen Hyatt on the field. Maybe we're not. I don't know. But I just feel like, Russ has been consistent, but that needs to continue in the preseason games. And, again, because these practices have not really gone that well for the offense, I want to see them prove that they can still move the ball down the field without Malik Neighbors because yes, he's the best piece of this offense. Yes, you don't want to lose your number one guy, but not everyone on this team is a bum. So, let's prove that we can utilize these other players and that they can make plays. And Russell has to be able to get the ball in their hands. So, I saw a couple plays where he was scrambling. I saw him utilize the middle of the field a little bit where he's throwing like a 10-yard pass versus, a quick check down or a 5-yard slot throw to Wan'Dale, something like that. Like there's always going to be that. Obviously, that's going to be a big part of this offense, but I hope that in the preseason we can see him open up the field a little bit more than we saw last week. So that's what I want to see out of Russ. Obviously, he has a lot of experience. We know he's a successful quarterback in this league, but can they be a functional offense that can still score points without Malik Neighbors? I don't know, but I would like to see it this weekend. Now, the second thing is Jackson Dart. And look, some people are like, why don't you talk about Jameis? Why don't you talk about Tommy DeVito? And look, we know what Jameis Winston is. He's a gunslinger. He's accurate for the most part. He is also going to throw interceptions, but Jameis doesn't need the reps. Jackson Dart needs the reps, and Tommy DeVito is not going to be on this team after they make the cut. So we already know who the three quarterbacks are going to be. And Jackson Dart has the most to learn and the most to prove, I think. So Obviously he's a rookie. That's why there's been such a big focus on him, but he also is getting the most of the reps, which I also think is really important. So from Dart, I want to see consistency out of him, right? So we've seen him stack some days in a row where he's had some good practices and then he's able to translate that into a preseason game. Like we saw a pretty good showing from him against the Bills. I want to see if he can do that again against the Jets. If he's going against the Jets starters like Sauce Gardner, is he able to squeeze those throws into tight windows and give the wide receiver the opportunity to make a play? Now, that's something that he said. He said he's one of those quarterbacks who's going to throw it up and let the wide receiver make the play. Let's see it again against another team, maybe against starters, maybe with other wide receivers who are randomly in the rotation. If they throw Jalen Hyatt in, how does their connection look? Is he able to get the ball in his hands and give them the opportunity to make the play? Something that I saw last week is that the touchdown throw to little Jordan Humphrey was an audible play. And I don't know how accurate that was because I don't know if Dable would ever reveal that. And from what I listened to from Dable, I did not hear that from him. But if he continues, if Dable allows him the opportunity to audible and he can be successful and make plays like that, love to see it. I do really want to see him slide. And I know that he's not always going to have the opportunity to, right? But when he has the opportunity, does he take it? Or is he consistently trying to dive forward and, get that extra half a yard or whatever it is? He needs to protect himself, and I want to see him be able to do that. The last thing is to consistently improve on the accuracy. It looked like most of the throws that he threw last week were accurate. I think there were some miscommunications with wide receivers, so I'd like to see him clean that up a little bit and, just make sure that they're on the same page, that if he throws a ball to the wide receiver and he allows the wide receiver to make the play, you got to make the play as the wide receiver. So I'm really, the things that I've seen from Dart, I like. I still don't want him to be the starter. I think it's really valuable for Russell Wilson to be the starter and for Jackson Dart to learn behind him. But I think the more that he progresses throughout the preseason and the more that he's able to progress by getting through his reads, like the mental processing seems like it's been accelerating as the days and the weeks have gone on. And that's something that's really important, especially from a young quarterback. But, can he do that consistently, right? So, we saw that in practice where he had a couple good days in a row and then he had a not good day. And then, he was consistently good and did well in Buffalo, but they also struggle to move the ball against the Jets. So when it comes to the preseason game, can he bounce back? And in a live action game where it is the most important, can he prove that he's capable of getting through those reads, making smart decisions with the ball? If he calls an audible or the headset goes out, can he still make a play? Can he lead the offense? Can he change the protections? Things like that. So, as time goes on, that's what we're going to continue to see out of Dart, which is exciting. But, I just don't. Let's take it one day at a time here, okay? With Dart, that's all I'm going to say. All right, let's move along to the offensive line, because I think I spent a little too much time on the quarterbacks. So the offensive line, I think we are going to see the starters, and I think we're going to see Evan Neal and Marcus Bowe. So to me, those are the most important things. When we have the starters in there, number one, can they make it through a drive without penalties? James Hudson, I am looking at you, my dude. 2 penalties in a row last week, ended up slowing down the drive. They have to go for the field goal. You cannot do that in the regular season. So we're now a week removed from that, right? So when you're in a preseason game, the next week, can you clean up those mistakes? Can you avoid those penalties? I don't care if it's James Hudson in practice yesterday against the Jets, it was Marcus Bowe who got a false start, slowed down the drive. They have to improve upon that and get less penalties or shooting themselves in the foot. So I really want to see the penalties cleaned up from everyone. And look, I don't expect this team to be perfect, but back-to-back penalties, not okay. Not okay. So I want to see less penalties. I want to see things cleaned up. Marcus Bowe's a rookie. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Again, he's not going to be perfect. He did it in practice. Let's see if he can clean it up and not do it in a game. But the biggest things that I want to see from the offensive line, obviously the starting offensive line do their job. I want to see John Michael Schmitz prove that he deserves to be the starter, that he's not always up and down and he's not getting blown up by different players on every single team. I want to see him be consistent. That goes for the whole offensive line. If Evan Neal gets reps with the ones, how does he do? Can he step into that role seamlessly? Can he improve on the pass blocking, which has been his biggest problem? Can he get out of his stance quickly? Can he work on the hand blocking, which I believe was a bit of an issue? He's got long arms. Can he maintain the balance? That was always an issue with the tackle position. So it seems like he's slowly been improving upon that, but he didn't play last week against the Bills. So this week, he's going to have the opportunity, now that he's back at practice, do it in a live action game when it matters. That's what I want to see from Evan Neal. And same thing from Marcus Bowe. Like, I would like to see him at left tackle and right tackle again. I think it would be amazing if we're starting to get the confidence to feel like we might have our swing tackle of the future. And again, I'm not going to say that he is. I'm not going to say that Jackson Dart is our franchise quarterback. It is too early to say that. But wouldn't it be nice if both of those things panned out? Would be great. But Marcus Bowe did a really nice job last week. Again, stack the days, show consistency. You're going to play different teams. You're going to play different players every week. You have to prove that you're capable of going against the best of them week in and week out. I want to see that Saturday against the Jets. Lastly, let's talk about the wide receiver competition, because Daquan Felton, Jalen Hyatt, and Beau Collins were all back at practice this week, which is really important. Daquan Felton got some steps last week. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I feel like he's not done enough to prove that he's really in that quarterback competition. Montrell Washington, Little Jordan Humphrey, and Dalen Cambry, those three guys I think are really in the running with Juice Wells. Not Juice Wells. I would like Juice Wells to be in the running. He is not getting the reps with the ones like those other guys are. But Montrell Washington and Little Jordan Humphrey had a really great showing last week. Can they build on that and do it again this week? Can they solidify their role to this coaching staff that, look no further, we deserve to be the sixth or maybe seventh wide receiver on this roster? I'm really pulling for either one of them. I think they've both done a really nice job. I think Montrell Washington has a really great connection with Jackson Dart. I think that's been obvious throughout the camp so far. Little Jordan Humphrey is a bigger body wide receiver, which as a quarterback is really nice to have someone who's over 6 feet tall outside of the tight ends. So, it's really at this point in the season about being consistent and stacking good week after good week. So they have to be able to do that again this week against the Jets. Jets have a pretty good defense. I think Sauce Gardner and some of the other players that we didn't see this week during practice are going to be back. But I don't think we're going to see Malik Neighbors. But I think the wide receiver competition is going to be fun. If we see Jalen Hyatt, does he prove that he's good enough to be that wide receiver 4? In my opinion, he's not going anywhere. I know there's a lot of talks, or the Giants should trade him, cut him. They're not doing that. They traded up for him. This regime traded up for him. He's only in year 3. They still think he has potential. Russell has come in and done a number on Jalen Hyatt. The injuries seem to be an issue and what's slowing him down. But I think, between him and Neal, if we could see these guys on Saturday and see a good showing, it would benefit them a lot, especially after the fact that they didn't play last week. So I'm really rooting for Little Jordan Humphrey, Montrell Washington. I think those guys really are the two that are going to battle it out. Beau Collins has also done a really nice job throughout camp, but he didn't get to play last week. So let's see how he does in the rotation this week. Can he match up with those two and prove that he deserves that spot on the roster over either one of them? Time will tell, but Saturday's going to be fun to watch. Stay tuned for more Giants latest.